you very much, Doctor. It's unfortunate that we ended it with that quote, democracy is flourishing but liberty is not. It really just shows that democracy, for some people, it just reflects in the political process and nothing else. I open the floor to 3 questions. Again.
Since Malaysia always say that Singapore is the younger sibling, so I'm in run 2 instead of 1. Anyway, thank you, Dr. Pradana Boy. I think that's you have described. Is this working? You have described the process of Shariatization as a concern. Yeah, you have described this clamour for Sharia or Shariatization as a concern. But I think there is one major element that I think we should not forget: why people are turning to the idea of Shariatization or even Islamization, things like that. And I think one major factor is perhaps the failure of institutions, public institutions, political institutions, including the failures of the elites in society to deliver what they had promised in terms of the idea of progress and development, etc. And I think the recent turn towards Shariatization can also be seen in earlier example of the rise of religious revivalism of the 70s. I'm referring to Islamic revivalism. In the sense that they turn towards this whole idea of pursuit of an Islamic state, or that there is no distinction between Islam and politics, Islam din wa dawla, when Islam is the solution. This kind of rhetoric became popular and captured the minds of the masses from the 70s onward, is precisely because of the failures of secular Arab regimes and the arrested development of the Muslim world as a whole. Of course, that was also underpinned by the collusion between corrupt authoritarian Arab regimes with the neo-imperial powers that wants to maintain their interests in the Middle East and Muslim societies elsewhere. So I think that is part of the major factor in terms of why people then turn towards Islam as a solution. So that's one point. The second point is, I know you are from Muhammadiyah, and a lot of the discussion has been focused on Muhammadiyah, but I wish you would also say a little bit more about the role of the Nahdlatul Ulama, especially because, particularly from the 1980s onward, we cannot deny the very important role played by NU organizations like PESDAM and also P3M in terms of promotion of democratic ideals within the civil society groups that actually penetrated the pesantren. And that actually has given rise to a new generation of religious elites from traditional background to actually be mobilized by Abdul Rahman Wahid or Gus Dur, and captured their imagination of what Indonesia should be in protest against Suharto's authoritarian regime. And the role of Gus Dur and his forum democracy, particularly just before the fall of the New Order regime, needs to be emphasized. Last but not least is the intellectual discourse of the earlier period has been institutionalized through movements like PESDAM, P3M, Forum Demokrasi and all that, and has given rise to the kind of intellectual discourses, progressive intellectual discourses that you mentioned. Now moving forward, these intellectual discourses right now has to be institutionalized in order to bear fruits for the next generation. Are you seeing that happening, or how can we mobilize towards that? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pradana. Maybe there's one sector which is looking at democracy, human rights, actually one group which is the middle class. Yeah. What is the role of middle class? What have been, I mean, there's a lot of discussion on the middle class turning the conservative U-turn, or what they call the centralization of the middle class. supposedly they should be the one championing for, the kind of more liberal and, a democratic kind of attitude and sentiment. But it is actually the middle class, the one that becoming more and more asserting a kind of conservative outlook, and therefore it impact on democracy and human rights. Do you see this as a problem, number one? Two, in the socialization of democratic attitude, and by that extension human rights, to what extent the kind of democratic culture and democratic education penetrated in state education, and especially since you are more aware of the Muhammadiyah group, what sort of kind of socialization of democratic ideals within Muhammadiyah education? Thank you.
Thank you very much for comment from Imran and Dr. Azhar. The first one is, yes, I agree that the ascendance of Sharia tendency to one extent is also motivated by the failure of secular system. But then, referring something that not really actual as the solution, I think it's not also no guarantee that this alternative is also a success. For example, talking about democracy as an evil, democracy as a kufur system coming from the West, but then suddenly the idea is like the jumping of ideas that all this kind of thing can be solved only by caliphate, while the caliphate itself is not a single entity. Once I was in a panel with one of the Hizbut-Tahrir leaders, and I said that, which kind of caliphate are you actually referring to? Because some people, and I follow this kind of ideas, some people say that the real caliphate is only these four rightly guided caliphs. After that, it's not caliphate anymore, but it's like dynasty. And then, but if you still believe that Umayyad, Abbasid, Ottoman are all caliphate, actually which kind of caliphate are you referring to? Abbasid, Umayyad, Ottoman, Safavid, Mughal? And they said, yes, in bahasa Indonesia, pokoknya khilafah. The most important is Khalifah. So this is the, I say that referring something that I don't think they also know what we are referring to. And the debate also revolving around that Caliphate is also part of religious order. So if you don't, it's just even some people go very extremely saying that the obligation to found caliphate is only one level lower behind the obligation to for Salah, for example. So some people say something like this. So I agree that secular everywhere. That's why I like to quote something from the late Peter Berger, who very boldly acknowledged that the idea of the thesis of secularism was failed. And I see this is also the case with Indonesia. That's why one of my criticism to Majlis Ulama Indonesia is that the fatwa regarding to secularism is like attacking the shadow. In Indonesia, is there any secularism in Indonesia? I would say secularism is in bankruptcy now, because what we are currently see in Indonesia is the massive Islamization everywhere, including the clothes. I cannot understand properly but that now people also promote about jilbab halal, for example. Jilbab halal. My question is, apakah jilbab tudung itu dimakan? Kenapa harus halal, for example? So to me, this is something like what Nabi called ghulu. Waalaikum, hadisnya bicara, jangan kalian terjebak kepada ghulu. Ghulu itu adalah berlebih-lebihan dalam beragama. Maka saya mengutip one kitab written by Ali Ahmad Al-Durjawi in Arabic, called, the title is Hikmatut Tashri' wa Falsafatul. One of the chapter, my favorite chapter, one of my favorite chapter is a chapter called, the title was the Hikmatu Tarkil Ghulu Fiddin, the hikmah of living ghulu fiddin, dalam beragama. So it means that actually being religious is important, but should be proportional. To me, something like silbab dipakai ya, tudung dipakai. So if you say, okay, halal, to my it's not sense for me, nonsense. But then, okay, we can still understand because tudung dipakai. Maybe there should be halal element. But then, also in Indonesia now, people should talk about halal freezer. So if you buy a freezer to store the food, there should be halal label by MUI.
Business.
I cannot catch the idea. Kenapa itu peti sejuk harus halal? Bukan makanannya yang halal. And one friend of mine said that, oh, I know the idea. You buy a bottle of beer and put inside to become halal. For example. So, okay, and then the role of NU, I said now is NU term, I would say. It is the time for NU. During New Order period, the technocracy and bureaucracy were heavily dominated by, if we will not say Muhammadiyah, at least modernists. If we refer to Professor Kamal Hasan, for example, the modernization engine of Suharto is of course modernist group in Indonesia. And if we talk about modernists, who else to be referred? Muhammadiyah. Although some Muhammadiyah leaders would not agree about the role of Muhammadiyah in dynamizing or being the engine of New Order period, but then we cannot hide the role of modern group in dynamizing the pembangunanisme Suharto. Many people say that actually Suharto is not good enough. Suharto's relation to Nahdlatul Ulama was not good enough, because in the mind of Suharto, they are not supporter of pembangunan. Because of they are ousted from the government, so they build another pathway, namely NGOs. So Forum Demokrasi, like Pasdam, LKIS, many other was then this during the period of New Order, and they are become the dominant player in NGOs. But then now, after reform, they are still strong in NGOs, but also dominate government. Okay, and now we can see Maruf Amin, which is paradox actually. I mean, he is the engine behind the Gerakan Nasional Fatwa MUI, Gerakan 212 and etc. But then now become the important player at another side. So NU still strong in NGO, but now they are also in government, very strong. I don't know how it will be going, but Indonesia is the new government is currently defining about the new cabinet. But one of the most heated topic to be debated was how many ministers coming from Nahdlatul Ulama and how many ministers coming from Muhammadiyah. And Nahdlatul Ulama tend to say that Muhammadiyah is not entitled for ministry posts because they don't have any role in escorting Jokowi to the second presidency, for example. So this means that NU is strong in both sides now. So NGO, they are still strong, and also scholarship. If we talk about the spread of new academia, new intelligentsia, Indonesian new intelligentsia abroad, for example, they are dominated by Nahdlatul Ulama, new generation, young generation rather than Muhammadiyah. So this is the fact. So of course, but then this is the problem because of this competition. NU and Muhammadiyah should be two pillars of Indonesian moderation, basically. But then if they compete each other, maybe this radical group will have such kind of portfolio to come in. Okay, the Dr. Azhar about middle class. Yeah, currently many academia in the UIN, AN, they say that actually there is 3M which strongly influence the politics and religious landscape of Indonesia. 3M is like middle class, middle city, and millennial. So middle class mean in Jakarta, for example, more and more government offices are becoming more religious in sense of they do like salat berjamaah. That's maybe it's never happened before. We have masjid in the complex of the government offices, but many people they observe the salat in the hall, not in the masjid. So middle class is actually they strive for religiosity. The problem is the presence. The only group present for in the midst of the thirst of middle class set of religiosity is those kind of ustad. No progressive come for video, ceramah through video, for example, YouTube. YouTube is dominated by this kind of ustad. Right? We don't have progressive ustad in Indonesia who post their ceramah in YouTube. No. While this middle class actually those are practical people, so they will grab the thing that they got. So one of my thesis about this is because progressive group doesn't present in this kind of middle class. And also the middle town. Middle town is in 1980 people talk about the metropolitan cities, and also Dr. Najib Buhani has a book called Sufisme Kota. They have 1990s. But then now this idea shifts to middle and small cities. For example, like in Malang, in Bandung, for example. Bandung is a long story about this. But then middle class, middle city, and millennial. Many parents are now becoming more religious in terms of clothes because of the child, the kids. For example, a student studied in university, and because of they are striving for religiosity, they follow this group, and change the clothes. Those who are, for example, for the girl, they change the tudung from the small tudung to the sari one, it's big. And when they come to the house, when come home, they say to their mak, macam mana tak pakai tudung yang syar'i? The tendency is orang tua tend to be proud of their kid. So then they change. And then why are you changing the clothes? My kid suggests me. And because the kids get this kind of idea for universities, so they believe. Yeah. So this kind of shift is taking place, and also the millennial. So we talk about 3M. So I agree that middle class actually they have kind of important role. The problem is no progressive group come present to this group. That's why to some of us I say that we have to be present to them. So we follow the method of, let's say, conservative group. If they have drama on YouTube, why don't we do like that? The idea is not to imitate, but rather than to give our middle class group a choice or alternative. Why they become not radical? Why they become conservative? Because they don't have choice. They always hear about from this kind of stuff. No other. So Professor Samik Mubni once said that because those progressive group are following hit and run method. Kasih ceramah, seminar, pergi. But those who we call conservative, they present, duduk masjid, mengelola masjid, become cakmer, jadi guru mengaji. Mana ada kelompok progresif guru mengaji? Itu problem. And people ask me, you also, why don't you give khutbah Jumat? I said, saya nak khutbah Jumat, tapi tak ada yang menjemput. Bagaimana? So the present is also important thing, and this public Islamicity is now being dominated by this kind of group. But I am confident in saying that actually there are some rational middle class. Those rational middle class are actually unaffiliated. They are not affiliated to NU, they are not affiliated to Ahmadiyah, and they don't like as well to the idea of the religious discourse produced by those conservative. But then they don't have choice. But I believe. So if those progressive present, maybe the situation will be a bit better. I mean, not better, but I mean the situation will shift. But if those progressives still play hit and run pattern, more and more conservative are produced in Indonesia. Okay, thank you very much.
Struck by your last few comments.
Yeah.
Right now there's a phenomenon where we find that even some notorious in inverted comma progressives like Mas Ulil is now also turning back to Kitab Kuning.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that his Pengajian Ihya and also Kitab Al-Hikam has thousands of following live on Facebook. So perhaps that is one model where it's actually grounded in the very tradition of the Islam Nusantara, but utilizing new media in order to generate viewership and followership. I think that might be an antidote, because young people are now, like what you said, they are not interested in mass organization, organisasi massa seperti NU atau Muhammadiyah dan sebagainya, but they are going online now, and if there is no alternative, they will go to Abdul Somad and Azaidrus, maybe Mufti Meng and such. So maybe IRF and jaringan what do you call it, jaringan Jim ya. Dulu kita ada jaringan Islam liberal Asia Tenggara, tapi akronimnya lagi terus. So maybe that's one way moving forward, we need to think how to utilize new media and having intellectual scholars to bring the message down to the masses through new media. We can explore that. Yeah.
Very much for the comments, and thank you, Doctor. I think one thing I take away from this one is that kita tak sepatutnya menggunakan instrumen-instrumen central macam government intervention to combat extremism. I think that's one thing that I think I can take away from this. Bila Dr. Zakir Naik cakap Islam tidak tersebar melalui pedang, one thing that struck me today is that actually in today's version, pedang tu is just government intervention. You enforce your will to the people. It may not be necessarily through violence, but through coercion. So I think when government tries to coerce one form of Islam, we may expect some backlash, and I think we have to tread caution when it comes to using state means to end extremism. Thank you, Doctor, for the presentation. Thank you, everyone, for the good comments.